Hi guys, welcome to Fierce and Pretty. Honey here. Today the topic is Finno-Ugric Shamanism, and I'm gonna use the Ukompakka, the Mythologia Fennica Tarot, as a kind of a prop here today to show you guys what I learned yesterday on the shamanistic course that I was joining. I have previously made one video about when I was joining a shamanistic workshop. It was a whole weekend workshop, but it was constructed around more about the Michael Harner's core shamanism idea. And I can link that video down below if anybody is interested. But yesterday I was joining a course that the topic was the Finno-Ugric Shamanism. And that was kind of a different viewpoint on the broad topic of shamanism, because historically Finland has been and even still today is populated by kind of two different groups. We've had the Sami people here forever, like over 10,000 years or so living, and the Sami people have their own shamanistic practices, their own drums, which luckily few of them have survived. But for example, the Finnish shaman drums have not survived. Christianity came and destroyed all of them. Even as a Finn, I learned a lot about new stuff yesterday on that course. So I thought that I would share them to anybody who is interested on the more shamanistic topics. I think that this whole process for me has been kind of like the DNA test, genealogy, looking into the Finnish history, the Finnish mythology. It's been kind of like a broad umbrella for this finding the roots, kind of ancestral work and topics like that, because the world of spiritual matters is still really fresh to me, even 2-3 years in now. So it has been interesting to learn about the heritage and the roots even of my own people here up in Finland in a totally new way that I haven't in my mundane life during the past 38 years. So that's kind of mind-blowing to learn so many new things. But overall, when it comes to Finno-Ugric Shamanism, it is quite similar as a total as all the native people shamanism is around the world. For example, the threefold worldview of the upper world, the middle world, and the lower world. That is also present in the Finno-Ugric Shamanism. But when I was listening on the course yesterday, when we talked about the old folk names to these threefold worldviews and the characters of the Mythologia Fennica Tarot started to pop in the mind, and we even had a little discussion with the course leader about this deck, and he said that Susanna's book is really a great one, because we had a broader conversation about how hard it is to find good, readable data about our history here in Finland and our mythology, because we have the Kalevala, but they are the old poems, and that's not the easiest way to read. And the majority of the books that we have are kind of old and really scientifically, but also really poorly written. So there is not an easy read book on the topic, and that's why we spoke about Susanna's book, which is actually a well-written piece. The only challenge in this, when we're talking about the overall mythology and shamanistic practices, for example, is that this is of course written in the form of the tarot deck. But overall the course experience was really different than the last one. We did 2 drum journeys. One where the course leader was just drumming in the beginning of the day, and at the end we also did a group drumming. And once again I learned or I experienced the similar way that for me those group drummings are challenging. I was able to journey in both of them, but I still find the energy of when you have several drums and several drummers, that the energy in the room gets quite high. So these thoughts are from the course yesterday, and what I learned about the course instructor, about the Finno-Ugric Shamanism, and the concepts that made me think about the Mythologia Fennica Tarot. And I was digging up these cards, and I'm going to try to explain you a bit about this Finnish shamanistic worldview through these cards. So the main character along this journey, of course, is the shaman. He works in shamanism as a link between these 3 worlds for the village or whatever group of people it was back then in the olden times, when there was no Christianity, no organized religion, when the shaman was the group figure, the main kind of priest or doctor or whatever type of figure in the community. So he's the link here, the shaman. Then when we think about the threefold worldview, we have the middle world where we all live. And so in Finnish mythology and Finno-Ugric Shamanism, we have had a rich heritage of different spirits in our realm, in the nature. For example, these tonttu, an elf type of figure. We have one living in sauna, for example. They might live in the forests, but they are kind of, for example, saunatonttu is an elf, that a spirit that lives in the sauna. And we have had a rich kind of heritage about spells, and many of them also are for sauna and things like that, and for the nature and for the spirits. But also in the shamanic worldview, in the middle world, you have different spirits in the forest, and also because it is the animistic worldview, everything had a spirit, everything was alive, everything was approached with courtesy, and people were asking promise from trees, can they be cut, and flowers, can they be picked, and so on. So the big group of these middle world spirits were important in daily life also. And in a Finno-Ugric worldview, the middle world was called Metsola, and it's kind of like word kind of like forest land, but kind of not. But it's impossible to try to translate these worlds. But forest land would be kind of a free-flowing interpretation of the middle world and what it was called. And the forest was playing a big part of it all. Then if we go to the underworld, which is also in other type of shamanism, the main place to go to a place for the shaman. And so even in Finno-Ugric Shamanism, the shaman went to the lower world and collect the knowledge, because the understanding was that when people die, that the spirit and all the knowledge from past generations will end up there. And I will talk about more for this process next, after I've gone through the threefold worldview. So the lower world was called Pohjola. And if you are familiar with the Mythologia Fennica Tarot, we have different people that are linked to this place called Pohjola. And how I would translate Pohjola would be kind of like Northland. And even though north should be up, but in the Finno-Ugric Shamanism, Pohjola, so the Northland, was the underworld. And in this deck we have like the gates of Pohjola, so the gates to the underworld. We have Louhi there, the matriarch ruling it. We have the maiden of Pohjola, and for example the wedding of Pohjola. These different stories that are kind of the main thing in the Kalevala. But Pohjola was the underworld, and where the shaman would travel to. So if we think about, for example, a drum journey, you go to the lower world in a drum journey. Everybody have their unique way of traveling there and what route they use. But kind of like we can think of the shaman entering the gate of Pohjola on his way of collecting the knowledge. But the underworld had different names also. On top of Pohjola it could be called Manala or Tuonela. So these were all different names for the underworld. And this is Tuonelan tyttö, the one who's kind of driving the raft of Tuonela on the river of Tuonela. This was part of the rite of passage from this life to underworld and the never-ending cycle of life and rebirth. Because in Finno-Ugric Shamanism there was this understanding of kind of like reincarnation and going in to the cycle and circle and seeing if we will return or not. But then the third part of the threefold worldview is the upper realms, where the gods live, kind of the sky aspect. And it was called Päivölä, or the Great Suuri Tapiola. This is Tapio, and Tapiola would mean kind of like his place. So it was the place for the gods. And one main god figure in Finno-Ugric Shamanism is also Ukko, the high one, or the high god. To me, it often kind of links with the characteristics of Odin with Ukko. But Päivälä was the place for the gods, and shamans didn't travel so much to the upper worlds because it was thought that the knowledge that the gods have wouldn't be in any way useful for people in the mundane world. It was such high knowledge that it couldn't be helping in these questions that the shaman was trying to find the answers to. And then one part from the sky is called Lintukoto, so it's kind of like bird home. And it was thought that the Milky Way was the place where the birds flew when winter came, and there they lived. So the sky is part of the upper world. So now that we have talked about the threefold worldview in Finno-Ugric Shamanism, we should also talk about the view, how they saw the spirit and kind of the soul aspect of human beings in this life. And on the course we were talking about 3 different aspects of human soul or human spirit that was considered in Finnish shamanism. And the first kind of spirit or soul part was called Löyly. And this card is called Löylyn henki, so the spirit of Löyly. And I'm trying to explain it the best I can. I guess everybody knows what sauna is like. You have a room with wooden bench, and then you have kiuas, so the stove. You can heat it with wood or electricity, and then you have stones on top of it. And then what you do, you heat the stones, and then you go in there, and then you cast water on top of the stones, and it makes this hot steam. So this is called löyly. And it was thought that löyly was the part of our soul, our spirit soul, and kind of the life force in human being. So as long as we were breathing, the löyly was present in us. And the moment we die, this part leaves the body, and that part of the soul dies. And then there was the part of kind of like self-soul or free soul or kindred soul or kindred spirit or shadow soul. That is actually the part that the shaman could separate from himself or herself when they were doing these travels, these journeys to the underworld. So this part of the soul was released for the journeying. And this part of the soul was also considered that after dying, that this part moves into tuonela, so to the underworld, and would be part of the reincarnation process, that the souls were cleansed in the waters of Tuonela, in the Tuonela River, and that's the part where we lose our memories, and we go in that water up into the higher realms, to the higher world, to the gods, to be decided if we and how we get to be born again. But this part of the soul would live. And part of this self-soul or kindred soul or shadow soul, whatever you decide to call it, it's hard to try to translate the names in English, is that ghosts were considered these soul parts that sometimes, for some reason, they refused to go to the underworld straight away to the river of Tuonela, and they were considered that they could spend a period of time in this realm with us after dying, and they were kind of stuck in the middle world, in the Metsola world. Some people still can experience that if a relative, a close one, dies, like kind of they are near. Soon after the death, they still kind of feel the spirit of the past loved one with them. And it was also considered in the Finnish shamanism that could happen. But sometimes they were stuck, and then they needed to be helped to reach the underworld. And this is called the people of the graveyard. And this kind of reminded me of the ghosts and the parts of soul that were stuck still in this world, the middle world with us, when they were supposed to go down under to the world of Pohjola, to the underworld, and travel the river of Tuonela. And then the third part of the soul. So we had the löyly, the kind of life force that dies when we stop breathing and we die. And we have the part of the soul that goes into the reincarnation process. But also a third part of the soul of human beings were kind of like the occupant spirit, or the Finnish word you can translate into occupant, or then even to fairy. But the concept is that part of the soul is who we truly are. That one true thing that we truly are. That we are not what we call ourselves. We are not our name. We are not what we do as a work. But kind of like, you could link it to the concept that Toth people know as the guardian angel or whatever. But the essence, the inner part of who we truly are, and who is that that soul that is traveling in the endless cycle of death and rebirth. And it's kind of like your own soul and the very nature of yourself. And it is kind of the guardian of this body that we are, that it is occupying in this lifetime. And it's supposed to guide us like the intuition. So that was kind of the three parts of the soul on top of the threefolded worldview. And it was believed that the core spirit, or the actual soul, that who we are, the core soul, would be transformed into the child, into that body, when the child received their name, for example. But the elf and fairy tradition has been really rich in Finland, and also a big part of the Finno-Ugric Shamanism. And for that way also working with ancestors and with the spirits of the old shamans that have died and transferred into the cycle. That parts of those memories, even though the part of the soul continues in the cycle of life, but part of it always remains in the underworld. One great example in the Mythologia Fennica Tarot about kind of a deceased shaman or a dead old ancient wise man knower is the figure of Antero Vipunen, who has become a rock. And Väinämöinen is the wise man, kind of like a shaman figure that enters Antero Vipunen's mouth. And from that route he goes to the underworld to collect all the lost knowledge that is preserved in the underworld from all the past generations that have lived before us. That part of that knowledge always stays there and can be reached through these travels that the shaman did to the underworld. But those were just parts of the things that we discussed on this course on Finno-Ugric Shamanism. It was a really interesting course, but these were the things that made me really think about the Mythologia Fennica Tarot and how it is preserved in the mythology and folklore in Finland from generation to generation. But overall, when it comes to my explorations on shamanism, I actually drew 2 cards before I went to the course yesterday. And I was using the Thoth deck. And here you see the cards that I draw. So I got the Princess of Fire and the Tower. And in the morning because my intent for that draw was, what will this day bring? And I was wondering about the Tower. What could it mean? And so I did my preparations and left early from home in case it was bad weather, it was snowing, so just to make sure that I get there safe and sound. And still after the day, when I got home, nothing really intense and mind-shattering actually happened. And I was wondering what the Tower was signifying in the reading to me. And the more I was thinking about it, the more I understood that it was kind of an closing the book type of situation. Because I kind of feel that my explorations around the topic of shamanism have kind of run their course. I think that the reason for me to look into this path was to get more base understanding. I kind of never felt that it is a path for me that I would like to explore deeper, and because it is its own world. But I think I've learned a lot of valuable things reading a lot of books, studying it online, the topic, and most of all, during these experiences with the drum, with these different drum journeys, and in these courses. So I think that some aspects and things I will definitely carry with me, but I don't think that I will be investing a lot of time and attend a lot more courses and explore the path any deeper. I think that I have gotten what I was kind of searching for this path, and I think it will enrich my practice overall, but it just isn't the one path for me that I'm willing to work for, and not even necessarily think that my strength lie in that. But one interesting thing that I totally learned and gained about this all was the meditation workings and how to connect and how to let parts of myself go and explore different realms in meditation or whatever. I think I learned a lot of great skills for that, and for that I'm really happy. But this was all about today, the Finno-Ugric Shamanism and our worldview through the lens of the Mythologia Fennica Tarot. Until next time, bye guys!